Hello, everybody. Wild Man Z here with a really cool bodybuilding book review. This is a real classic from the 1970s. It's written by Bill Pearl. You see various pictures of him on the cover, depictions. This is all illustrated with a few photographs to spice it up a little bit. Keys to the Inner Universe is the name of the book, which is a very interesting name for a workout book. This was back in the days. Bill Pearl goes back to the 40s and 50s of physical culture where people associated bodybuilding. They didn't really call it that necessarily in the very old days, but they associated with physical culture. They would be very much into nutrition. They would do other forms of exercise like gymnastics and a lot of handstands, things like that. A lot of practical exercise, a lot of strength training like strongman type of stuff as we have today. There was just a lot of emphasis on like good old fashioned, like hardcore basic nutrition with the supplements they had at the time, like brewer's yeast and molasses, blackstrap molasses, desiccated liver or just liver, period. A lot of stuff like that. And, in modern times, I think bodybuilding, especially since I would say really since the 90s, has been just so many people are of top-notch bodybuilders are dying at young ages. It's not really a mystery why. You weigh 300 pounds and you're 5'9", you're taking a ton of drugs and force-feeding yourself and starving in cycles. It tends to do damage to your body. This was a much healthier time, and people of his time period tended to live very long and very healthy lives. Bill Pearl he died in 2022, and he, apparently was in pretty good health. What happened was somewhere earlier in the year, apparently he was riding his lawnmower, meaning he was still doing yard work in his 90s, and it fell over on him. They found him outside with like the mower on top of him, some sort of horrible thing like that. That did not kill him, but he died several months later. I would kind of think that catalyzed it, although there wasn't a lot of details about it. Let's find a picture of they have photographs in here of Bill Pearl before we get into it. He's a classic era guy. He's before Arnold and all them, although they did compete sometimes in the same shows. Bill Pearl was definitely around about 20 years or so before Arnold. Just kept going for a long time. Very classic, very rugged physique. I always liked the guy. He was born on a reservation. I think it was the Warm Springs Reservation of Oregon, I believe. It might be Washington State. I believe it's Oregon, and so he's a Native American. I'm not sure what tribal affinity is associated with that reservation. Here's a picture of him on the bottom, just a classic pose, really rugged physique, well-proportioned. He was in the time period where being super ripped, vascular, wasn't a big deal. These days talk about dryness and seeing gluteal striations. This was before that. They looked for more of a balanced overall muscular physique with, good skin tone, good shape to the muscles, with, significant conditioning, but not like exceptional like today, which, causes a lot of stress on the body. You can't really retain it. Did a lot of strongman. He would rip license plates in half and blow up hot water bottles and bend horseshoes and stuff like that. And he could really do it. He was really strong. Just had a rugged look. He didn't hang out with the other dudes too much. He sometimes he'd do an old-time strongman type thing. He wearing the furry bison skin type of leotard, I guess you call those, posing trunks. Very classic type of guy. I liked him because, he was before my time, but, I'd read up on him and, once in a while they'd have, an article with him on Muscle and Fitness. I remember they had a pictorial with him in the 80s. And other magazines that were not Joe Weider, but, he didn't compete in the Weider IFBB. He was competing in NABBA. He won Mr. Universe 4 or 5 times in NABBA Universe. That was based in Europe, but he would fly over there. So he's competing in a time frame of guys like Steve Reeves and John Grimmer, kind of in that time frame, into the early part of the Arnold era. And what it was back in those days was Joe Weider's federation was sort of a newer thing. They were really the new kid on the block. He started offering more money. Also, I think Weider, one of his angles early on was other federations like the AAU. They had bodybuilding as well in America in the old days, along with a host of other sports. But from what I've heard from various people, personally and on the internet, is that they were very racist. Guys would go in contests, black guys. I grew up on Long Island, and a lot of the guys I worked out in the gym with were black, and they would go in those shows, and some of these guys had phenomenal physiques, and of course, a little bit of bias because they're my friends, but you can even hear older guys like Robbie Robinson, who's a famous bodybuilder, say, yeah, no, they were notoriously racist. These black guys would always they might get like the most muscular and like all the body part awards and still take 5th place. You're kind of like, it didn't make sense. So Leader, when he started out with the IFBB, he kind of encouraged a lot of bodybuilders, a lot of great bodybuilders from the Caribbean, from Barbados and places like that. Guys like Al Beckles, I want to say Bertil Fox, and a whole host of guys who are Caribbean based. Either from birth or living there, and so they would come up and they would get treated more fairly than the AAU, I would say. So Bill Pearl, but he competed a lot in the other federations. He competed a lot in NABA, and what happened was when Leader formed his IFBB federation, he really, if you came from another federation, you came over, you really would not do well usually, definitely you couldn't go back and forth. So like Arnold competed now, but then when he came to the IFBB, he kind of stayed there. Other guys, I think like Frank Zane and so forth, competed NABA. Once they came to the IFBB, they stayed there. He stayed in the NABA, so he never competed directly against Arnold, although I think he did compete against Sergio Oliva and beat him. So he was a really good bodybuilder back in the day. I always wondered how he would have done against Arnold. I think Arnold's physique went further over time, but this guy early on. Oh, here's a picture of him. They did share the stage, but not together. Direct competition. Bill Pearl had won the NABA Mr. Universe Pro, and Arnold had won the Amateur. And I know this was in the 60s. Let me see what year this is. 1967, year I was born. And so you can see Arnold here, if you're familiar with Arnold's from movies of bodybuilding. Definitely from his bodybuilding peak around 74, I would say he peaked. He's a lot smoother. Still, the legs aren't that well developed. Chest and arms look good, but the rest of them are definitely smooth. The abs are barely visible. There's a few striations and definitely no tan. I'm not dissing Arnold. I never could look like Arnold did in his prime. I mean, that was unbelievable. So what this book is, this thick old book, is a whole bunch of exercises. It's all drawn out. So he'll give you, it's all barbell, dumbbell, body-based, like push-ups, pull-ups, things like that. Some simple cable exercises. There's no fancy machines in here because this was written before they had fancy machines. And they'll just give you a whole lot of variations on different exercises with drawings. Here's various types of ways of doing tricep extensions. Literally hundreds of varieties of exercises. I don't know, there's well over 1,000 exercises. If you watch modern, for 5 people to watch, if you watch modern bodybuilding videos, you'll see a lot of Mike O'Hearn, built guy around my age, really built, really strong. But he does a lot of like reverse grip triceps, and he never claimed to made it up, but he promotes a lot of those exercises because he's a big believer, kind of like I am, of putting the body in positions that are different. Not in a dangerous way. Start out with light weights, but don't always do the same motion over and over. If you always do something with a forward grip, try a reverse grip. Try push down with a reverse grip. It puts your body under stress a different way, helps the joints and the cartilage stay healthy because you're working from different angles. You're putting stress on it. And again, he's extremely strong. You'll see him doing reverse grip bench presses with 400 pounds. You don't have to do that. You could do it on a Smith machine with, 35 pounds on each side or something. Try it out. So, a whole bunch of exercises, a lot of body weight. Here's a whole host of ab exercises. He's showing, body base. This was really good during COVID because I would flip through this because I was stuck inside and I had to just do calisthenics for a while. I actually had a pair of 50-pound dumbbells, so I was mixing 50-pound dumbbells and calisthenics for a few weeks until I got some weight sets. I got some weights from a friend of mine. Oh, he looks good in this picture. He was a little more mature in his career. I'd say probably around 40 here. He got better as he got older. He's really hard and muscular here, a lot more so than early on. Body matured and developed. He maybe added a little bit of extra supplementation, as we say, to himself, but definitely not early on. Definitely was a very healthy man his whole life. Didn't abuse anything if he did anything at all. Here was an exercise, various forms of it. He's showing a couple of them here back in the day. Here's showing, let me get it real close. He's showing what's called, it's a variation of a sissy squat. which is not any kind of a slam to anybody. Sissy squat, it's I don't know if Vince Gironda invented it, but he certainly popularized it back in the 40s, 50s. It's for Sisyphus, I believe he was a titan in Greek mythology. He was, I forgot what he did, but he did something where the gods punished him by making him roll a giant boulder up a steep hill, Mount Olympus maybe, for eternity. Every time he got to the top, it rolled back down. So the sissy squat is implied to be that because it's torturous. You can do it with your body weight, and it's kind of like a more intense form of a leg extension. But it's a body-based exercise, and I would do a lot of variations of things like that. He's just showing you different types of one-arm rows here, and I think he has some barbell rows in there too, and he's showing you different ways you can do it with sometimes I'll do a one-arm row at my house here. I'm in New York. I don't have heavy dumbbells, so I hook up a T-bar, and I do a one-arm row off that. That's similar, not identical to what he's doing, because we came up with a lot of things like this in the old days because we didn't have a lot of equipment, and so here's some variations on laterals. You might get bored of the way you're doing it and try another angle. You hear these internet guys saying, optimum exercise. I got an optimum exercise, and they're doing the same thing over and over. You come back 5 years using the same weight, doing it over and over. And it's like, sometimes you just try something a little different and you just stress the muscle out differently. You run with it for a month or two and then switch exercises. I have about 20 different ways I can do a side lateral, and they're all good. Just, hit the muscle different ways. Just sometimes I hold it a little bit behind my back, kind of pulls out this lateral head a little bit more. Sometimes I'll use a little momentum, kind of heave it up, not a lot, but a little bit, so I can use, I usually use, like when I'm doing really strict, 25s, 30s, 35s at the most, but when I do a little bit of momentum, I can use like 40, 45s, and then I lower it down slow, and people say, oh, it's cheating. It's like, it's a little cheap, but it's like making your muscle grow. And he shows a lot of these techniques in here, and I'm not sure, I have to look who's the artist, but here's another exercise people think is a waste of time these days. They say it's no good, is the kickback. I don't know. In a contracted position, I feel it really good. You can't use heavy weight with it. I think that's the problem, is guys use a ton of weight and they do this little herky-jerky thing I call chicken winging it. And, I think sometimes it's just a technique that people say these exercises aren't good. Clearly, some exercises are better suited for certain people, and clearly you have certain goals and you use certain exercises. If you're playing football, doing a lot of like power cleans, that's a very explosive exercise. It's a great move. On the other hand, if you're a 50-year-old guy in your 50s like myself and you have a little bit of arthritis and you're not playing football, power cleans may not be a good exercise for you. It's not a great bodybuilding exercise, but it's a great explosive exercise for explosive power. So, you don't have to do every exercise. It's like what your needs are. Here's one of my favorite leg exercises. I think I got a video or two of me doing them. That's a front squat, and it shows all different foot widths and standing on things and not standing on things and different grips and so forth. Different ways of holding the bar. It's all good. Olympic weightlifters tend to hold it like this. I hold it like that across my body. I think it's good for Olympic weightlifters to hold it like that because it simulates the way that they lift. And it's here's a nice picture of Bill. So Bill was cool. Bill mainly trained at home in the Oregon area and had a home gym. I think it was built in a barn. He trained some people, one person that I don't know, but I went to his gym and I've seen him in there a number of times. That was a guy by the name of JD. I'd have to actually look up what his real name is. He owned a gym on Long Island. He knew Bill Pearl, and then also the person who he was a competitive bodybuilder. I believe he was natural, a thinner guy, but with a nice physique. These days we'd say like a classic, men's physique type of thing, but nice. And I'd love to look like that. And then the other guy was Chris Dickerson, who won the Mr. Olympia. And I believe I know that Bill Pearl trained Chris Dickerson for that. And he used to be friends with JD. Bill Pearl's guys all tended to kind of know each other. Dave Johns and a whole bunch of guys and good bodybuilders, but they weren't like the Gold's Gym boys. They weren't hanging out with Arnold and Franco and those guys. Those guys were more like country type of guys or guys out in the boondocks. I'm out here in Eastern Long Island, and we're not too far from the city, but we're a little bit out in the sticks here. And so, it was kind of cool. It was like they used to write each other letters and stuff like that about their training. And then once in a while, somebody would go out to Bill's place and stay with him and train out in Oregon for like Chris did for the Olympia. So here's a cool way of doing laterals on a bench like this, and doing the front raise like that. And I actually find when I do it, particularly when I decline down more, it kind of switches the emphasis from the front towards the rear delt. And so he says front deltoids here, but I feel it when I incline down, particularly a little bit lower than that. Probably the angle makes a difference. I feel quite a bit in the rear delt. And so I use it for rear delt. It's like nothing's written in stone. If you do an exercise and you feel it a certain way, oh, here's an exercise I like a lot. See how he's pulling the bar over and pressing it? That's a pullover press. Sometimes, I think I have a video of it, I do a pullover press and extend for triceps, but the pullover and press is like he's showing here. It's good, he says, for the lower pectorals and the rib cage. That's true, and you'll also feel it in the tricep. So it's kind of a combination exercise. That's a really good exercise if you're training, for example, chest and back or chest and triceps together, because it also works the lats when you pull over like that. And you can kind of put it at the end of chest, and then it blows your chest out. People say pullovers don't work your chest. Well, they do. What it's working is the understructure, like muscles like the serratus and so forth, that are technically not pectoral muscles, but they're part of that complex. These things all work together, and it kind of pulls your rib cage up. And if you notice what a lot of the old school bodybuilders, Bill Pearl, all these guys, Arnold, Sergio Oliva, Frank Zane notably, they always have the muscles right under here between the lat and the rib cage really well developed. So even though he doesn't have a teeny waist, he's got really good abdominal development in that picture, but it kind of pulls, when you have developed serratus and intercostals and those muscles in there with a small waist that can vacuum in because you have good control over it and your gut isn't spilling over from eating 1 million calories a day and taking a ton of drugs. You really get an impressive shape that, although it's not your pectorals, it kind of enhances the way your pectorals look. So a little bit on nutrition in here, just a lot of, he has anatomy charts in here to tell you where all the muscles are. Because again, you're like, well, I can Google it. Like, yeah, no crap. But it's like, this was back before the internet, and it was just cool that he put all this cool information in here for people. He goes through all the body parts. He talks about posing routines, so he shows you it's static. You have to kind of imagine the transitions, but he shows you like a posing routine, like how to plan it. Talks about how to put it for your body type and what kind of music to use for your body type and all that kind of important stuff. Posing was really big deal back in the day. Talks about picking up posing trunks, which are obviously, they've changed over time. They wear these little skimpy things these days. But the dude looked healthy. I just love that classic look. He just looks like a bronze statue. You don't see any of the distension in the stomach, none of the weirdness going on, not overly vascular. I've always been, when I'm in shape, I'm very vascular, and I've never found it particularly attractive. That's just how I am. I certainly wouldn't try to take drugs or push myself in a way to enhance that look. Just some people are more veiny than others. I don't think it's necessarily attractive quality of a physique, just genetics. In my case, here he is when he's young. You can tell this is in the 50s, early 53. Clearly no steroids here, and just fantastic natural physique. And, you start out, you look like that, a year or two of training, you probably have pretty good genetics. And it's like, clearly he did. And just a whole bunch of pictures. Here's him and Arnold again. In the 67 Olympia, they weren't, Universe. They weren't competing against each other. They were in different. Bill was a pro, and Arnold was an amateur. He put some other great bodybuilders in here from back in the day. So here's my man Frank Zane. Everybody loves that guy's build, unless I get some real big guys on impressed with him. Here's him with Chris Dickerson. I'm not sure the gentleman in the middle is. Let's just see who he is. Tommy Bisco, he's former Mr. America. He says Tommy Bisco, former Mr. New Jersey. So he's a local guy. Never met him though. But there's Chris Dickerson there, the guy on the right. He won Mr. Olympia and Mr. America. I think he might have been the first black Mr. America. Mr. America. I'm not sure about that, but one of the first, that's for sure. He was a great singer. I've met him at JD's club a few times, and really, really good singer. Just a whole bunch of guys here he's trained and training with. Here's Bill Pearl, classic arms crossed strongman type pose with Boyer Coe, the Raging Cajun, famous Southern bodybuilder. Here's a bunch of guys that don't know. Pat Casey, after benching the world record of 632 pounds, that was a beast back in the day. Still is a beast, but that was, the crudeness of training techniques and drugs and all that. Here we go. Here we got some guys that are real good here. These are all, here's Steve Reeves, classic bodybuilder. Jim Morris, he passed away a few years ago. He lived a good long life. He was good friends with Bill Pearl. I know he trained him a lot. Very natural looking physique. Oh, here's Dave Johns. I know Dave Johns, big guy. I think he did powerlifting too. He was good friends with him. Dennis Tenorino. He was an Italian bodybuilder. He was slated to be the first Hercules. Arnold kind of stole his part from him. So the guys were more healthy looking back then. When I started training, these were the type of guys I'd look at their pictures. A little bit on nutrition. It gives you calorie breakdown of foods and stuff like that. It's pre-internet, so that information was handy. I didn't actually have this book when I was a kid. I don't think I could afford it. I bought this book online, so this is not a book I had when I was younger. It's got it about, I guess, 8 or 10 years ago, and I thought it was fantastic. I said, wow, if I wish I had this when I was a kid, because I can remember sitting in a gym. We call it Charlie's Gym. It was called Intense Body Health Club. It was in Miller Place, New York, and not far from my current house and my family house where I'm living these days. And I just remember being there. We only had like T-bar in the corner, a couple benches, dumbbells, and we had a lat machine. You had to do cable rows off the bottom of it. There was a Smith machine. We had to do calves, standing calf raises, and a lot of exercises on there, shoulder presses we did on there. But there was a lot of ingenuity, a lot of different ways we would do a lot of high and low rows off of the lat machine. We put a bench in front of it. We did bench rows several different ways. We had one long bench we could put on top of the power rack in the where people squatted, and we could do them laying down. I think they call that a seal row these days. I've seen people do it. I think they make a device for it these days. And then other types of rows where we would be on incline benches and so forth, and row barbells and dumbbells. And I see a lot of young guys do it today. A lot of rope pullovers. We had ropes. There weren't anything you could buy. We just took a piece of rope and used it for various exercises. Now they sell a lot of different handles and so forth. But we were basically jury rigging it. And sometimes it's funny because I'll see somebody doing like an exercise from back in the day, and they'll say, I saw this new exercise online. And I'm like, they don't realize this exercise has been around for like 60, 70 years. But, the truth of the matter is that as soon as people had weights and you had somebody clever or bored, they came up with different ways of lifting them. And so it's kind of like sex. It's like it doesn't take too much to come up with some new ideas. But at any rate, just reeling in the years, enjoying this old book here. It was put out in 79, at least the edition I have. And so it's awesome. I love these old school guys. So on that note, I will let you go. Wild Man Z out. Enjoy the weather. Hopefully it's not too cold where you're at. Where I'm at in New York, it is about 20 degrees right now and quite windy. So have a good night or a good day. Take care.